Hi, this is Mr. Chow. Thanks for submitting the essay so quickly. Okay, you have attempted the question, do electronic devices such as tablets or smartphones help or hinder students in their studies? This is an argumentative question. So, how I will proceed to give my feedback is that I think you probably already know that this essay writing itself will give you 30 marks in the O-level examination. So half of that 30 marks come from language, okay, which is 15 marks, and then the other half comes from content, which is 15 marks as well. So I will just separate my feedback into these two different components. Then maybe at the end of the feedback, I will try to give you some pointers as to how you can improve your grades. So let's get started. And alright, you started out by writing electronic devices are now part and parcel of our lives, and we rely on these devices in our work. And this part here is actually not required, so you might want to remove that. And in recent years, this one of the top schools. Okay, there's some language issue here. So what you see, okay, those highlighted areas are the parts where I think there are some language issues. And so what you should have done, okay, because you look at what you have written. One of the top schools in Singapore, Nanyang Girls High School, adopted this. Okay, this is the pronoun here, as a means of understanding concepts better through visual representations in the form of iPads. So there's some expression errors here. So this should have been written as adopted iPads instead of this. So you mentioned iPads first as a means. So iPad is the tool, okay, of understanding concepts better through visual representations of concepts. So that is very clear. All right. Okay, and okay, there's no mistake here. I'll just remove this for now. Okay. Oops. Right. And now, okay, powerful search engines like Google help to deliver results to questions. So far, so good. And comma is actually not necessary here. And then the rest of the sentence looks good. And here I can see that you have made a stand. Hence, I believe that electronic devices such as tablets or smartphones helps. I think there is an error here. All right. So because this is a plural form, electronic devices, so your verb should be plural as well. So help, no s. All right. So it's good that you have stated your stand very early in the in your introduction, so that the examiner doesn't have to go around hunting for your stand. Okay, and for this type of questions, a stand is actually compulsory. Okay, you need to state a stand. Then after that, you will go ahead to try to support your arguments with different types of evidence. And the only thing I can think about for this introductory paragraph is that you stated some evidence right in the beginning of your essay. I think it is better that you take this piece of evidence and somehow try to weave it into your other arguments at the other, in the other paragraphs, instead of having it here in the beginning of the paragraph. All right. So okay, let's move on to the next paragraph. Students can log into Quizlets or Khan Academy. So it's very obvious that you're going to give this as the examples, okay, to support your argument. Okay, I think there's another spelling mistake here. Concise, C-O-N-C-I-S-E. All right. And this is one of the best paragraphs that I've seen in the entire essay. The second paragraph. So just a couple of minor mistakes. Okay, open-ended questions are not open-end. Okay, and I think if you can maintain the quality of the language in this particular paragraph throughout your entire essay, then I think you will do well in the language component. Okay. Now let's move on. Next paragraph. Okay, this can be benefits. Okay, two issue. First, spelling mistake, benefits, right? N-E. And then is singular, so you should not have s. All right. And again, this pronoun not very clear. This, okay, to manipulate this to solve the questions, you need to have an s. All right. Okay, now let's look at page 2. Okay, the internet is also a source of a fast, and there's some issue here, okay? So what you do is either you choose to use this, a source of, or a fast and reliable means. Don't mix the two together, right? So if you delete this, then your sentence reads, the internet is also a fast and reliable means for obtaining information, okay? Then you delete a source of. And another issue that I have with this particular paragraph is this long sentence itself. This in itself, okay, this is a far cry from the half an hour or more to them. I take the figure out and answer to complex question, comma, by flipping textbooks, comma, then individually, comma, linking the concept without coming to the concept, comma, when this can all be performed, found in one page in Thought CEO, comma, for example, full stop. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to squeeze all the different words into one single sentence without thinking about the sentence structure. And this is a very common mistake. This is what we call a run-on sentence, which is not good. Okay, what you want to do is to break this up into shorter sentences so that you are sure that the sentence structure is correct, and you don't want to make these mistakes again. So fortunately, this is the only sentence that I can spot in this particular essay that is run on. All right. I know what you're trying to say with it, okay, but just for the language aspect, just make sure that, try to shorten it a bit. Alright, next paragraph. Smartphones lead, L-E-A-D, okay, you're still using the present tense to increase connectivity is. So this is a pronoun mistake, smartphones is plural, okay, so your pronoun here should be their benefits have spelled, okay. Capital letter for Google, that's the name. This is much more convenient, which can then be used. So this part here is not very clear to me, which can then be used. So my question is, what can then be used? I think what you're trying to say is that it's the time that can be used, right? So do you mention that before? Maybe not, right? So what you want to do is to explain a bit more clearly, okay? And group discussions on WhatsApp facilitate critical thinking skills. So critical thinking skills is not something that you facilitate, is something that you develop, right? So you might want to rephrase this as to facilitate the development of critical thinking skills, and then that would be perfect. All right. Okay, these comments are typically these are for the content aspect. So the last paragraph, I think, the concluding paragraph, just a couple more grammar mistakes. Okay, due to the boundless educational potential, the internet and apps that can be. So you use the word potential here, and potential is not a word that you use with view. So potential, you don't view potential, okay? We realize the potential. So instead of using the word view, okay, you may want to change it to realize, right? So potential, the internet and apps that can be realized through these devices, and full stop. And that would conclude your essay. So, okay, my thoughts about the language, if I zoom out a little bit, okay, it's nothing horrendous. I think you have a pretty good command of grammar, and your language is quite good. And as you can see here in the second paragraph, you have the ability to write in, a piece of writing with almost perfect grammar. So what you want to do is to concentrate more, okay, and try to reduce the number of mistakes that you make in the rest of the essays. And I think, judging by your writing, we use a lot of cursive writing, you can write fast enough, and I can assure you that you have enough time, okay, during the O-level exams to complete the essay, even if you have to go on to write more than 2 pages. Okay, now 2 pages is good enough word count, okay, to be submitted as an essay for the O-levels. Okay, but sometimes we find that because we have more important content to add, 2 pages is simply not enough. And you can write fast, then there's an advantage. Okay, you can usually add more content if you want. Okay, and let me give you some pointers as to the content aspects and how to improve on the content. Now, so what we have used, okay, a couple of main pointers that I have for you. First, what you have used is that most of the time you use examples, okay, as your primary evidence to support your arguments. You use Quizlets and Khan Academy, and the majority of your writing is based on these two examples. What I suggest that you can do is to add more anecdotal evidence. So anecdotal evidence means that you actually try to provide more personal experiences, more short stories. So I think these stories can actually help to spice up the essay and make it a lot more interesting, and they are counted as valid evidence, right, that you can use for your essays. After all, this is not a research paper, this is a language paper, and because you are writing these short stories, you can actually give yourself these opportunities to demonstrate, right, your writing capabilities, right, that you can write, give examples that are very vivid, okay, and you can write stories, short stories as well. That's also very interesting, and both of these will help to support your argument, okay, and actually strengthen them. Okay, then the other pointer that I have for you is that, okay, now you notice that if I switch between these two pages, okay, you have allocated a large proportion of your essay to discussing the positive aspects of the smartphone. Now, of course, I understand that you have taken a stand and you want to prove that your stand is correct, and you want to persuade the reader that your stand is a reasonable one, and that is very convincing. Okay, and you proceed to allocate one whole page right up to close to the end of your essay. Okay, right up to this part. Okay, on discussing the all the positive aspects, and then you allocate one tiny little paragraph here, okay, to talk about the negative aspects of the essay. So what this essentially does to your essay is that this creates a very biased view for the entire essay. Okay, so the idea of writing a good argumentative essay is not just to discuss all about the positives or the negatives. The idea is to get it, okay, the essay to be a very balanced essay. So you would have some discussion, maybe right up to say this part, okay, on all the positives, okay, including all your anecdotal evidences, your personal recounts, your stories and stuff. And then you might want to allocate more time and space to rebut the potential arguments, right, the negative aspects of it, all right, and this would probably present a more balanced view to the reader, and in turn you might be surprised to see that if you can balance it really very well, and you can rebut these arguments really well, okay, overall your essay will become a more convincing one, as opposed to having just a discussion on mostly the positive aspects of the smartphones. All right, so these are my main points, and the last thing I want to say is about your conclusion. So I'm going to zoom in here. So what I find about the conclusion is that I think this is a very sound conclusion, and you have demonstrated that you are a thinking student. Okay, so you see the last statement here. To do this, students must be the master of their phones and not the other way around. So I think the conclusion is perfectly sound. And overall, for the entire essay, if you are to ask me what grade you can expect to get from this, I personally think that this would could get you, say, a high B4 or maybe even a low B3. Okay, but it will definitely not get you into the A band, right? So because in order to get an A, if I'm to just zoom out quickly again, okay, and you look at all these highlighted mistakes, if you can work harder and check through your work and clean this all up and make sure you don't make expression errors like this. For an A essay, okay, just for your information, okay, if you want to score high for the language component, your entire essay should not contain more than 4 to 5 mistakes maximum. Okay, in other words, you must try to aim for perfection. Okay, but then again, we're human beings, we will make mistakes. So you have that wiggle room, right? 3 to 5 mistakes for the entire essay. Okay, and then you can expect to score high for your language component. And for your content component, I think the points that I've just mentioned, right, the introduction part, the stand, which you did well, okay, try to make it into a more balanced essay and try to include more personal stories, and the examiner is particularly interested to hear about your opinion. So I do not see any of that in your essay, right? Okay, what do you think? How have you used this to your own benefit? and which are the areas which you find to be most interesting. Do you see a positive results after using Khan Academy and Quizlet, right? Have your own results improved? All right, all this information can make the story a lot more interesting. That's about all I have to say about this essay. So again, thanks for submitting the essay, and I look forward to reading your next essay. Bye.